Welcome to the Food Freedom and Life Mastery podcast with me, your host, Harry Snell. Right, here we go. My very first podcast. My name's Harry and I'm a weight loss coach. I work primarily with women and my ethos is that most diets don't work, and for most people, the biggest problem they need to solve is with their mind. Now, I literally just walked through the door. I sat down, I put my phone down and pressed record. And the plan for this is just one word in my mind, and that is the mind. So I'm looking through the window and it's getting dark. It's 4:58 p.m, beginning of November. And so the first question I have for you is, did you know that you have an unconscious mind? Your mind is made up of two main parts: the conscious part of the brain and unconscious, or sometimes referred to as the subconscious part of the brain. Now, the conscious part of the brain is the newer part of your brain that developed more recently in time. Still a long time ago, but it's the newer part of your brain. And this is the part of the brain that deals with logic and language. It's the intelligent part of your brain. So when you think, this is the part of the brain you're using. When you solve problems, this is the part of the brain you're using. When you form language, this is the part of the brain you're using. So it's the logical part of the brain, and it's kind of slow, but intelligent. Now, the other part of your brain, the unconscious part, is the older part of your brain. And this is referred to sometimes as your lizard brain, your, what else they refer to as your primitive brain, or your survival brain. And this is the part of the brain that formed a long, long time ago. It's the part of the brain that most animals have, and it's the part of the brain that's involved with fight or flight. So it's also often referred to as the autopilot or automatic part of the brain. And if you've ever seen images on the internet of your brain as an iceberg, you see the top of the iceberg poking through the sea, the ocean, and there's a small little part. And then in the diagram, the underneath part, the part below the water, is huge and not visible. And this is the same as your conscious and unconscious mind, or brain, or however you'd like to call it. So the unconscious mind is very, very important. Let's talk about it. So its primary function is to keep you alive. So it cares about your safety, and it's very strong and powerful in getting you to do stuff. So this is the part of the brain that when you step out in front of a car, you jump back almost instantly. You don't think with your logical conscious brain. Your automatic brain takes over and takes you out of danger, takes you out of the way of that danger. So you don't think, oh, there's a car coming, I should move out of the way. That would be too slow, you'd be dead. So this brain acts and takes you away from that danger. The same thing if you are in your kitchen and you touch a hot pan, you move your hand away. So the same thing, you don't think logically about it. Your brain jumps in and it takes over your logical thinking. And so, as I said, this brain, this part of your brain, its main function is to keep you alive. And it has many other functions as well. So it deals with emotions, it deals with feelings, it deals with habits. And it's also dealing with a lot of things that you don't even realize. So part of keeping you alive is saving energy. So some things we tend to do in our daily lives don't make sense, but when we understand or think about these two parts of the brain, they do start to make sense. So scientists have studied both sides and found that 95% or around 95% of our actions and behaviours in our day are automatic. Only around 5% are coming from our conscious mind. So what that means is we're not really aware of the vast majority of the things that we're doing. And the importance of this is with change. So we want to change our life. When we want to work towards a goal, most people, they're thinking about their conscious behaviours and actions, whereas very few people think about the unconscious brain. And this is super, super important, and one of the big reasons that most people fail with what they want to change in their life, because they are kind of forcing it. If you imagine, let's talk about like an analogy quickly. So if you imagine a boat in the sea, a rowing boat, you're sat in this rowing boat, let's say it's a sunny day, and you got your oars and you want to row in a certain direction. So this is your conscious brain. And so remember I said it's around 5% of your actions, your behaviours in your day. So you're going in, let's say you're going right. And so, okay, you're moving along. However, if your unconscious brain, your unconscious mind, is not in alignment with your conscious behaviour, then it may be pulling back in the opposite direction. So we can demonstrate this. Imagine under the water, there is a submarine, and it's a big yellow submarine. You can imagine Paul McCartney or something sat inside, his face appearing through the window. And imagine this is attached to the bottom of your rowing boat by a piece of rope or a chain or something, and it's going in the opposite direction. It's pulling it with 95% force in the opposite direction. Who do you think is going to win? Right? It's going to be the unconscious part of your brain. It's going to be that submarine. And so it's impossible to achieve some things unless we have everything in alignment. Yes, you can use force and willpower, but that's very tiring. It often doesn't last. If we talk about weight loss, those who use their willpower can sometimes last a few weeks, a few months, or sometimes a bit more, but it's very tiring. And what usually happens when your willpower runs out, you end up doing things like relapsing, binging, and things you didn't want to do, because suddenly you have no control with this logical mind anymore, and the unconscious is taking over. So just a quick sidestep, some of the things that your unconscious mind holds are your beliefs and your values and your identity. So if your beliefs, values and identity don't align with your goal, then it's going to be pulling back in the opposite direction, and you are not going to be able to work towards your goal very easily. So let's just create a little scenario for example's sake. So let's say we've got someone who wants to lose weight. Let's call them Jessica. And Jessica wants to lose a stone, 12 pounds, 14 pounds, sorry. And she decides, I'm going to do a diet. Let's choose Slimming World. I'm going to be really good. I'm just going to follow the plan and go for it. Cool. She might lose a little bit of weight in the beginning. She has good behaviours in terms of like following the plan, and she does a little bit of exercise as well. However, she may have beliefs, values and identity that don't support that. They may be pulling back in the opposite direction in certain ways. Let's explore those. So a belief might be that she thinks that fit and healthy people are arrogant and show off. So somewhere inside her, something's going to be kind of pulling back in the opposite direction and making her kind of think, I don't actually want to be fit and healthy. Logically, she does, because she's overweight and it affects her in her life. But subconsciously, that part of the brain is trying to look out for her, and she doesn't align with that. So it might sabotage her. It might pull back in the opposite direction. It might suggest to her, oh, you've been good this week, have a little bit of extra ice cream, or those kind of things that the brain starts to do. And she increasingly finds it harder and harder to follow through with that 5%. Let me just drink some water. Values. If you're not valuing your health and fitness, or you may even value it, but it might not be high or the highest on your health and fitness scale of values. So your overall scale of values. So let's say someone really values their career, and that is above their health and fitness on the scale, on the ladder, on the whatever you'd like to call it, on the list. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just means that when something comes up with your career, you put it first rather than your health and fitness. And so let's say work is busy, you do that rather than going for your gym session, or you do that rather than cooking yourself a nice healthy meal. And so you might still value it, like I said, but it might not be high on the list. So we have to consider these things. And that's just an example. You might not value it at all. You might value something else. Or there might be a conflict of values. So you may have a conflict of your love and connection value and your health and fitness value. So you go for a family meal and someone makes a nice meal in your family, whether it's your mum, your dad, or brother or sister, whoever, aunt or uncle, and you have a portion, it's really nice, and then they say, oh, you look like you enjoyed that, have some more. And there's this conflict of value of, you think to fulfill your love and connection value, you need to say yes when someone offers you something like that they've put effort into, and undermine your health and fitness value by eating more than you would have otherwise. So you can see there, those are the two things you value, but there's a conflict with them and you don't know what to do. So then again, you might feel guilty, you might feel bad the next day. Why did I do that? That wasn't in alignment with my value. So again, something that's back in the opposite direction. And then identity. So identity is the strongest thing you have in terms of pulling power for actions. So an identity or a role, because they're similar things, we have many of them in our lives. And identity is who you see yourself as. So it's when I say I am rather than I do or I have. So I could say I eat vegetables, but someone that's a vegetarian says I am a vegetarian. We might have the same meal, but one thing is a behavior, one thing is identity, the thing they see themselves as. And so you have a lot of identities. You are made up of different sub-identities around things like your career, your personal situation, family situation, your culture, your religion, all those kind of things. So you might have an identity of, I am a mother, I am a lawyer, I am a Christian. So those are your identity collections. And those drive your behaviors. So when you become a mother, the behaviors that come from that are very easy because they are who you see yourself as. Whereas someone who's not a mother would find it a lot harder to do things that a mother would do. Does that make sense? The same when you see yourself as a vegetarian, you go out of your way to do that, whereas someone that's not, the behaviors don't become so easy. So when you have an identity, when you form an identity, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, the behaviors filter down and become so much more easy or easier. So I don't want to go too much into this because it's a big topic and we've gone 14 minutes already. So all I want you to understand today is that you have these two parts of your brain, the conscious, logical brain, where you make thoughts and decisions and you set your goal, and your unconscious brain, the unconscious mind, where things like your beliefs, values, identities are held, and it has these functions like keeping you alive, keeping you safe. And so these come into play when certain things happen in your life, and it's very important to understand them. And so these are some of the topics I'm going to be talking about over the next few weeks, months, years, who even knows, because this is the first one. Who knows if this is going to be popular. But in actual fact, I don't mind if people don't listen to this straight away, because these are just thoughts and things I'm putting out there, and it helps me kind of just have a little chat to myself. So there we go. Coming up for 15 minutes, I'm going to leave it there. And one little thing I want to do, starting from maybe even now, is give you an action at the end of every podcast, because just listening is useful, but having a little action as well is even more useful. So just over the next day or so, pay attention to things that might be happening automatically in your day. So any automatic reactions, any habits, any behaviors. And you can also notice things like feelings, like urges or compulsions you get. And this is your unconscious mind trying to get you to do stuff to fulfill its needs. So just note those things down and have a think about them. And just notice the difference between your conscious thinking and choice and these things that are coming from your unconscious mind. But I'm going to leave it there. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll speak to you next time. And if you'd like to find out more about what I do, you can find me on YouTube, The Food Freedom Coach, or just type in my name, Harry Snell. I'm also on Instagram at Harry Snell Fitness, or if you'd like to send me an email, go to my website, harrysnell.com.